Historic Preservation Commission, November 20th, 2023. It's just a couple minutes past 6 o'clock, in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is held in violation of that act, they should say so at this time. Pledge allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Copeland?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Here.
Ms. Campbell? Here. Mr. Cogswell? Here. Ms. Pisagno?
Here.
Ms. Wilson-Stridick?
Here.
Mr. Testa?
Here.
Mr. Stevenson?
Here.
Mr. Becker?
Here.
Thank you.
The minutes, October 16th, 2023, you've had an opportunity to review those. Do I have a motion to accept those?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Motion by Mr. Cogswell, seconded by Ms. Pisagno. Is that right, Dave B? Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stridick?
Abstain.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolutions. Carlson Glacier, 710 Columbia Avenue, Block 1071, Lot 3, Resolution 2023-37. 1005 Beach Avenue LLC, 1005 Beach Avenue, Block 1095, Lot 15, Resolution 2023-38. Conrad, 347 Congress Street, Block 1031, Lots 82 and 3, Resolution 2023-39. Bogle, 102 First Avenue, Block 1015, Lot 6, Resolution 2023-40. Celatega LLC, 1521 Beach Avenue, Block 1174, Lots 15 and 16, Resolutions 2023-41. And Young, 122 Decatur Street, Block 1041, Lot 6, Resolution 2023-42. Do I have a motion to accept those resolutions?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stridick?
Abstain.
Mr. Testa?
Yes, with respect to all except Celatega, on which I abstain.
Thank you.
Applications approved or denied in review. You've had a chance to look at those. Do I have a motion to accept those?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes, for all, with the exception of Hendricks, 106 Trenton Avenue, on which I abstain.
Thank you.
First order of business is old business. It's Carlin, 1102 Lafayette Street, Block 1113, Lot 1. This is a contributing property. It's an addition to an attached garage, a shed, windows, a driveway, walkway, and a fence.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this conversation because I live within 200 feet of this property.
Okay, thank you. We're going to need another mic.
We should be okay. Sure.
We'll share.
Welcome. You know, the drill. Pam, then we need your name and your relationship to the property and your other people.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Pam Fine from Fine Architecture. I'm with my clients, Val and Marty Carlin, and this is 1102 Lafayette Street. We are here for final review and approval. We were here in April. A couple requests were made at that point to revise the location of a chimney on the first floor plan, and also to provide a landscape design plan. Concern was raised about seeing the addition from Lafayette. So I believe we have provided everything as requested. I can run through the whole packet or just highlight what was changed.
Yeah, would you just highlight what's changed?
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to jump to the architectural sheets, which is it starts with A1. And that's just basically the construction drawings showing all the details, materials, everything that was approved in the conceptual. And then if you jump to A4, shows the first floor plan. And you'll notice along the left side, we have a chimney, which is located in the gathering room. And back in April, we had a second chimney along that same left side wall, which was located in the covered porch. We relocated the covered porch chimney to the rear from the so that was the change, and then the only other change was the addition of the landscape plan, which was prepared by Beechwood Landscape Architecture and Construction. And that is basically just showing the new plantings, which are going to be located along the Lafayette street side. He has a really nice key showing the types of plants and the corresponding pictures. So that should give you an idea of what that will look like from the street along Lafayette. The zoning board approved it, said it was a robust landscape plan. They thought it was beautiful. So we are here showing you that today to see if that satisfies your concern about seeing the addition from Lafayette. You'll see along the landscape plan, he has it looks like a hedgerow of the Gulf Tide osmanthus, which is the first picture in this packet. So I believe just that in and of itself should give you some privacy and conceal and hide that addition along the left side. But in addition to that, there are various blue spruces, there are winterberry hollies, several other large shrubs that will, again, just hide that view from Lafayette.
Terrific.
Soften, yes. It is, I think it's going to be a beautiful addition to an already beautiful house. And I think this landscape plan is the cherry on top.
No, I think it'll make a big difference in the streetscape. So we appreciate your taking our comments and turning them into something. Normally, as you know, we go around the room. In this instance, though, I think I would just open it to the commission. Does anyone have any questions or observations about this project?
Originally, I was concerned about the loss of symmetry when the stairway went out and the addition went in, and so that bothered me. But as you say, the landscaping plan on that side is so robust that it's a good word for it. It's really thick. It pretty much covers up the change in the symmetry. So I think that was a good way of addressing our concern.
Any other comment?
The Gulf Tide, the bushes,
The bushes.
I think this must show an adult version of that. Is that a controlled thing? You can keep it within about that size?
It looks like, you see the two photos. The one is more of a natural,
Yeah.
and then the other is more of a hedgerow. So, yeah, I would kind of defer to the owners and to see what their idea is for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we like a somewhat manicured look, not totally, how do you say? We don't want it wild and invasive, but we want some subtleness and well-kept look,
Yeah.
without it being too, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to-
Fussy.
Yeah.
I think you might be introducing something a little bit new in our town. Is anybody familiar with these in our town to date? Or at least if I'm seeing it, I certainly didn't know the name of it. But, yeah, it looks like a good concept, and I like your idea of not having it so overly pruned. It looks like the queen is expecting.
I think the density of it is really what matters, so.
Other comments?
That's good.
No, this is, Pam, we appreciate your effort on this. This is what we were hoping for. I think it's a big improvement.
There are no variances required, right?
We obtained everything that we needed to this past month.
I just thought I saw a note that a variance was required.
We did. We already-
Applying. So
yep,
you're
been there, done
representing
that.
that you're through with the variance?
Done it, yep.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move to grant final approval on the application as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell, Mr. Cogswell,
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Strodick,
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business, new business, Cape May Sitting, 715 Franklin Street, Block 1080, Lot 30. This is a key contributing property. The AME Church steeple, the tower, the stairs, and the ramp. Take it away.
Good evening, everybody.
Who are you?
Paul Dietrich, Cape May City engineer, here presenting the application. As part of the plan, submittal, we have a set of plans prepared by Czar Engineering that prepared the steeple. As you recall, this is a phase 2 of the project. Phase 1 was previously here before the commission and SPO, where they got approval to actually do the roof and the outside facade, replacement windows, and kind of bring the rest of the structure back. But we needed time to kind of really take a look at the steeple. We also were able to obtain some additional county grant funding to continue on with this phase. So we're looking forward to moving this project forward. The first sheet really shows, we tried to detail a lot of the individual architectural elements and windows, because obviously they had several different unique windows, so we wanted to make sure to document this for when it goes out to bid, that we are making sure to get those replica details accounted for. The design team also took a lot of painstaking help, and I believe with several members of the HPC, in reconstructing the dimensions and the size and the scope of the witch's hat to bring that back in. I think that was a vital element to bring back in. So you can see we have a full picture of the old steeple and the whole church, and I think it's been detailed on the other sets of the architectural plans. There is one other deviation, I'll say, from the original church. By code, the original church had the steps going right down from the front door. By code, we have to have a landing and then go down the stairs. So there, you can see it's labeled S1, it's the second sheet in the plan set, that we have a 3-foot landing and then the steps going down, and we still have sufficient clearance on the sidewalk to have clearance by, so we didn't have to we were fortunate that we didn't have to make a set of bridge stairs or anything like that. We were able to kind of keep the same look, but we did have to add a landing by code. I mean, that's kind of the, we're going to match all the same material, the same material list that we did on the original renovations on the exterior. We're carrying those through on the bell tower.
Thank you. As you and I talked, the picture of the old church, the old bell tower, and what you're showing tonight is a different proportion than I expected. This tower is, the steeple portion is shorter, and it may or may not be thicker, but the bell tower, there's something different than what we had come up with before. You're showing 77 feet.
I mean, the other sketch that we had was 64 feet, and we're showing 65 feet, but that was just a difference in grade. I'm not sure.
On this page, Paul, on this page, it's showing 65 feet. And this proportion is different than what is being shown on S2. Talking about this picture here, this proportion doesn't look the same to me.
That, if you look at the elevation height on the side, it says it's 65 feet. That 77 is an elevation, not a height. So if you look on the, I'll say the dimension of it, it's actually 65 feet. But what you're reading as 77 is not the height from grade to the top of the witch's hat. It's the elevation, from in the 1988 NAVD datum. So it's not 77 feet from what you're referencing.
I take it that there were no prior measurements of the steeple before?
There were not.
There's nothing exists that you can,
I think-
except shooting against with the photograph?
Correct, taking scales of the photograph, measuring windows in the photograph, and using that scaling to come up with the height. The 65 feet was, the number that we worked back into.
Yeah, I think that's indicated on S2
Yes,
on the left.
yes.
yeah.
Paul, where do I see the 65 feet on this?
On the side, so it's reading
Yes,
horizontally,
65 there.
it's 65 feet.
Yeah.
That dimension reads the 65 feet. So it's the same proportion, it's just, I think when you saw that 77 feet, it could be construed that was the height, but that's not the height, that's the elevation.
I mean, part of the difficulty, too, is looking at a historic photograph, and it appears that you have tried to proportion it from what you can tell in the photograph. And my impression of reading the drawings is that the drawings try to carry the proportions that you've sussed out from the photograph.
Photographs.
Yeah, you may recall, this was before us before, and the HPC did a lot of work. And the architect is in the,
Yes.
Catherine Lawrence is in the audience here. And the reason I was focused on the 65 is Catherine and her engineer and I independently projected this height using different techniques. The one I used is I actually measured this window here and then projected it. And so that's where the proportion came from. And as I recall, Catherine, and Catherine's engineer and I, we came within about a foot of
Each other.
each other. So that's where the 65 feet, and that's why I wanted to make sure I didn't.
Yes.
But
Sorry.
if I'm understanding, it sounds like you've hit that mark.
That's,
It sounds like that's
Yes.
actually hit. I mean,
And I looked at the right side, so sorry,
yeah, no problem.
misinterpreted.
So actually, the proportional issue, if you want to, for me, what seems slightly off is the height of the steeple relative to the height of the rest of the tower. In the original drawing, the original photographs, if you proportion it, the steeple is 44, from the ground to the roof line of the beginning of the steeple. If you take the height of the steeple relative to the height of the tower, it's 44% of that height, and what you've drawn is 36%. So it's significantly, the steeple itself is significantly less tall relative to the tower height. So
Right.
it's the proportion between the tower and the steeple, I think, is what Warren is trying to get at.
Well, you can see that in the picture, without doing the math. If you look at this picture here, this steeple, not measuring something, just looking at it, and then you go to this picture, the distance from here to here is less. So
well, my eye certainly agrees with that.
excuse me?
I said my eye certainly agrees with that. When I look at the picture, and I was thinking there might also be the possibility for some optical distortion, but that witch's hat is taller in the picture relative to the.
I mean, we'll be happy to sit back down and go over, I can have Butch from Czar Engineering come over and we can sit down one more time to go over those proportions, but I have no problem re-going over those proportions to make sure that they're
Yeah.
spot on.
Well, the good news is that this is a city project, so it's here for an advisory report, and we can advise to that extent.
And we want to make sure to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to get this right, because we're looking at a key building. And I think there is something, so thank you for that. We carry on. What else we have?
For this, any other questions?
So I could ask you another question then? If I'm seeing the picture correctly, and a couple of the other historical ones I've seen, and I realize you're doing the platform and the steps down to the street, were not the rails there metal and iron, and you're going to replace them with wood? Do I understand that correctly? You proposed wooden railings, and I thought we were dealing with iron rails before, which are lighter and don't quite give the bulk that.
Well, this is just the bell tower.
Well, the plans here include
Well,
railings.
no, include the front rail.
Includes a
front
ramp
stoop,
and railings and a bell tower.
And the ADA ramp.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the ramp, which is ADA. I was just concerned that it seemed to me you shifted from lighter metal rails that used to be there, if I'm remembering correctly, and if the pictures show that, to wooden rails.
Well, this building, very much like Cape May Stage, was really all wood.
Yeah, I
Cape May Stage
I think-
has wooden rails up and,
But
And I think that was-
Did have iron rails.
This church, but I think that when you looked at the old pictures, I think that given the age of the church and probably the nature of the church, that they probably didn't have the money to put in the iron rail, so most likely originally it was probably a wood railing.
But even in the pictures where you do have a metal railing, it looks like a 1960s era wrought iron type railing.
That's all I'm trying to do is clarify why you're going to wood when I saw
it
metal
was-
before. I mean, it's,
What I
to
had
me.
shared with Paul when Paul first came on and we had talked was that the ramp and the railing system would most likely have looked like what we now see at the Harriet Tubman Museum, at the Howe House. And I think the Howe House would be a good
And that's what we tried to follow through.
example of what we're looking for there.
I'll introduce myself, I guess. I apologize, Paul. Zach Mullock, Mayor. And to your point, Mr. Testa, I do think there was metal railings, but those were more modern, but modern, maybe 1950.
Yeah, I mean, simple, and there's nothing inappropriate about the wooden rails. I just wondered why we shifted from what was metal to what's real. The reason I say it is because it's so close to the street, and the church is of fine design, that heavy wooden rails to me add bulk that wouldn't necessarily be desirable. But, either way,
Right.
it works.
If you look at the picture that's a separate 8.5 by 11 that's in the package, if you really look at that picture, not the picture that I'll say is in the HPC survey picture, that picture that maybe is a little generation older, looks like it's more wood than metal.
Yeah.
I just want to comment when I went by the site, I did notice that Macedonia also has a very similar handicap ramp on their side of their building.
Yes.
And I think also, and this is, it's germane to the application, but it's not part of the application, nor will be part of the advisory report. But one of the things that, as we all well know, this space is going to be leased, it is being leased to East Lynn. There'll be proposals with respect to an addition on the back. And the front of it on Franklin, quite frankly, given the narrowness of Franklin and the closeness of the facade of the church to the street, and the prior history of the difficulties with that pole and a 70 or 80K transformer sitting on top of the pole, I would make a statement to the city that I would ask it to consider the possibility, I mean, and given how busy Franklin will be, of going underground.
We're actually,
eliminating the pole and transformer in front of the church.
we're actually already having discussions with Atlantic City Electric. We're looking at doing a streetscape project along Franklin from Lafayette to Washington. So we're looking at possibly putting all of the electrical and utility features underground along that entire block.
I'm really glad to hear that. That would be
We are
a
looking into that.
significant improvement to the
I
street.
hope that HPC does make that as part of their recommendation, because frankly, we would love to share that with Atlantic City Electric, that, this has been proposed by.
When we've already had a fire, damage, and we have fire trucks coming out of a new fire station. I'd hate to see that happen again. And we all know what will happen if a transformer goes forward, and it will surely hit the church.
Yes.
Okay, great news.
Well, we can make that, we'll be sure to make that part of the,
On the subject of railings, we'd be happy to go with HPC's recommendation. I mean, throughout the whole thing, really. But we did look at old photographs, and our understanding of it was just the mass of it, which wasn't big, but big enough that we felt it wasn't metal, that it was most likely wood. But the fact is, we don't know exactly what exists, so we'd be happy to do, whatever HPC recommends.
well, as I said, I think the Howell House is a good example. As you know, we worked on that ramp and then reworked.
Right. Yeah.
So it seems to me that would be as good a model as any, since we don't have any record. And of course, we didn't have a ramp.
From projects I can remember over time that we've reviewed, things like iron railings replacing wood and asbestos going on over clapboard, and these additions that date before I think most of us were born happened, and now that's not reflecting what was originally there. I think if you look at how many wood railings there are around town, wood was the chosen product in this town, and I think it would be the right thing to do. But I'm hoping we might reduce a little bit of wood. Does the handicap ramp have to come all the way out to the sidewalk to have the proper climb to get
Yeah,
into the...
every 12 feet, you have to, I think it's 12 feet, you have to have a flat. So by the time you bring that back up those couple of feet,
It looks like as it gets near the back of the church, it's very, very level. So I'm just wondering if that started a little bit further back.
you're right.
And came up to the entrance, it would be less of a...
I'll double check that. I didn't,
Okay.
It does look like there's probably 3 sections of flat
Yeah. I mean,
along there, to start
That would
it.
save money and also keep this, a necessary addition a little bit further back. Okay?
Yep.
Another thing people sometimes consider is grading. So grading it, so that you don't have to start the ramp quite so far forward.
Yeah, I think we'll pull the ramp back towards the back of the building. And then we would just have sidewalk and landscaping along the front.
Any other comments?
So no one's going to want to hear me say this, but how about the state? Have they seen
This-
this yet?
They wanted to get your recommendation
Yeah,
first, and as soon as I have the applications kind of half filled out. I was waiting for this recommendation before I can submit it up to SHPO.
Yeah, our letter of advisory has to go with the plan to the state. So do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that the application be approved with some final checkoffs by the review committee after we take a look at the height of the steeple, measuring from the old photograph and trying to see if we are going as high, that you will take a look at, continue, or we would like to support your efforts to get the telephone pole and wire pole away from the front of the building for safety and visibility. And we'd also like to see if the ADA ramp into the back could be moved further back, still meet code, and maybe even have some grading to, help with getting people up into the right heights to get into the building.
Yeah, we can definitely pull that back.
Just like to modify the motion if I could. It's a motion for the issuance of a favorable advisory report, not an approval. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a favorable advisory report. Right. That's what we'll be issuing.
Thanks, Jim.
It's in the blood.
So we have a motion.
And I'll second the motion. It's on the table. I made that little modification. I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Testa. Mr. Copeland.
Yes?
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell. Mr. Cogswell.
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, just an item of interest. The shingles that are going on the steeple, are they going to be fish scaled, pointed, or what?
What would you like?
Well, normally around Cape May, the shingles on a tower like that were fish scaled. I was just thinking that since there's such an emphasis in Gothic in this building, would pointed shingles be a little upside down Gothic creation to keep it in touch, or stick with a traditional fish scale in towers?
On this building? Well, this represents a pretty modest community, and
So just straight shingles?
I would think straight
Straight
shingles
shingles.
are
Straight shingles they
are
probably
more
wouldn't,
appropriate because of the,
they probably wouldn't have expended the cost on a specialized cut shingle and just did straight.
No change in the approval?
second item of business.
We vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. We're ready for the vote.
We just voted.
Yeah, so
We did?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Actually, I
Okay.
seconded and then we voted.
let's make,
And the night is young.
Man.
yes, okay. Next order of business. Cape May City, 717 Franklin Street, Block 1080, Lot 31. This is a non-contributing property. It's a demolition. It coincidentally is the building next door to the AME Church. And we have before us,
Paul Dietrich, city engineer, is back.
Zach Mullick, Mayor.
again, rather than go around the room, this is pretty straightforward. We had talked about this in a prior time, and
And this is,
are there any questions on this demolition?
My comment I have on this would be that this is an integral part of the church, being the manse for the church. And since we're setting up an African-American heritage area, this would be an important part of that being as part of the church.
We did also receive a letter of support for the demolition from the county library. You know, the library, there is no official off-street parking for that facility. And when you look at, you know, that whole, you know, Franklin Street, you know, there's not a lot of public parking readily accessible for all the different, you know, attractions that, you know, having additional public parking in that area will just bring it more to
This
public
is,
use.
this is, again, it's an application that results in an advisory report from us. But the question to me on the table is, should you not produce the recitation under our local ordinance of the satisfaction of the criteria for demolition? I mean, there are somewhere between 7 and 9, depending on when you're moving something.
There's 9.
But we're not moving anything, but it would be a good idea to offer testimony that would establish the bases for a demolition.
I think, you know, I think part of what I was just talking about, the parking, you know, the need for parking. I think that
Yeah.
you have a
If
deteriorated.
I could interrupt though, Paul, what the need is interesting, but the 9 points, the way on a demolition that we deal with that is we read each of the 9 points and then you comment.
Oh, you read each of them, okay.
It's long, but it's effective.
Yep, I got you.
Because you get to conclude that the building doesn't have enough merit
Yep.
to continue to exist.
All right, the first one, it's a historical, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic significance. Obviously, as a non-contributing structure and the deteriorated state that it's kind of currently in lends itself that it could be demolished. Its current and potential use for purposes currently permitted by this chapter or for the proposed, I think looking at, I think it's better suited for a public parking area as opposed to, you know, the deteriorated structure and use. And also currently the CCA is currently occupied in that building. They're going to be relocated over to the new school library project. So they'll have a new, better home in better facilities at that location. Its importance to the municipality and to the extent to which its historical and architectural value is such that its removal would be detrimental to the integrity of the historic property or the district and the public interest. I think considering it's a non-contributing structure in the district, I think that lends itself to what we're looking to do. The extent to which it is of such old, unusual, or uncommon design, craftsmanship, texture, or material that it would not be reproduced or could be reproduced only with great difficulty. Obviously, being a non-contributing structure, I don't believe it kind of fits into any of those characteristics. Here's one of the long ones. The extent to which the retention would increase property values, promote business, create new positions, attract tourists, students, writers, historians, artists, and artisans, attract new residents, encourage study and interest in the American history, stimulate interest in study in architecture and design, educate citizens in American culture and heritage, or make the municipality a more attractive and desirable place to live. Obviously, a deteriorated structure in its current condition, I think its proposed, you know, demolition would be more appropriate. The impact of its removal upon the historic district, considering it's a non-contributor, I don't think it's going to have a significant impact to the historic district. The structural soundness, integrity of the building, and the economic feasibility of restoring or rehabilitating the structure so as to comply with the requirements of the applicable building codes. Obviously, it's not deteriorated to such a point that it couldn't be rehabbed, but I think rehabbing it would not be a good use of public funds considering its better proposed use of that area.
The 8 and 9 only apply to relocation of
Okay.
a building, so they wouldn't apply here.
Perfect.
Thank you.
No problem.
Also, in conversation with the state, because as you know, this project has been going on for a long time. Interestingly enough, the state is supportive of a demo on this building. So, in fact, they changed the period of significance to accommodate it.
And it seems to me that, that it isn't, although it may have been used late as a parsonage, because the larger building behind the church disappeared, that either way, it's not there anymore. It does seem to me that it's not been identified in the reports we've just recently seen with respect to the significance of that structure to the African-American community. So it's not identified as something that was associated with a business, with an important residence. So it doesn't have that characteristic that might link it to importance for saving, because it doesn't have any architectural merit at all. So just want to point that out. Assume, and you're representing to us that when this comes down, the city's intention is to dedicate it to public parking spaces.
Yes.
Great.
Other questions or comments on this application? Do I have a motion?
I would move that the application relating to the structure for demolition be approved, and that we issue a favorable advisory report in favor of demolition of the structure.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So I just have the same comment I had before. I assume that now that
This will,
we do this, it'll go to
this will be going to the state along with the other.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Pisagno. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell. Mr. Cogswell.
Abstain.
Ms. Pisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Next order of business, Peterson, 244 Windsor Avenue, Block 1022, Lot 2. This is a contributing property. We're going to talk about the roof, siding, rear addition deck, railing, and steps. So, hello, Catherine.
Hello, I'm Catherine Lorenz, architect, and I'm representing Heather and Gordon. You want to say anything?
No, just happy to be here, a little nervous, but happy to be here. And,
Oh, don't be nervous, we're easy. We're easy, warm and fuzzy.
we just moved to Cape May here in February. It's a place we've always wanted to be, so we're just really happy to be here.
It's a great place to be.
It is a great place to be.
I thought that I would just go through the application and highlight the pages of importance. So, page 1 is a picture of the house. We'll go over the location in a second. It has these concrete steps and these wrought iron railings that we are proposing to demolish and build new steps and new railing. We are also, if we go to page 2, so we're going to reconfigure the front steps, replace the front railing, and in the rear of the house, we're going to see that it's sort of a hodgepodge of different additions over the years. We're going to try to clean that all up, put in a new rear addition with a rear deck. We're increasing the size of the bedroom, which I will show you in the drawings. Anything new that we're building will be wood-sided. We are not going to, the building right now is asbestos siding. And we're going to put a lattice around the rear. And again, when you see the drawings, you're going to realize what an improvement this is to the house. And all of this is because we are trying to increase the size of the master bedroom on the first floor and organize the kitchen. So if we go to page 3, any new roofing that we add will be asphaltic roofing to match. All the fascias, the rafter tails will be wood. We will have beadboard on the soffits that come out to match. We're going to have wood clapboard siding on the new addition. Any new windows will be wood primed. Any trim will be wood. We're going to put a French glass door in the back. That would be wood. The railings, the new railings that are going in the front and in the rear will be wood. The decking would be wood. The foundation, over only in the bedroom area, would be CMU stucco to match. And then we would have lattice underneath the rear addition. If we go to page 7, 7 shows you the site plan, and this building is on sort of a triangular lot where Windsor and Park Boulevard meet. When we see the photographs, you're going to see the rear improvement and the front improvement. If we go to page 9, I know there's new standards and there was some new requirement about flood. We are a historic building, so we don't have to comply with the FEMA, even though the first floor is above flood. If we go to, I want to just read part of the property report because, and that would be on page 11. This is a contributing colonial revival plan book building constructed circa 1930. It goes on to say that most of the windows on the second and first floor are aluminum with frame storm windows. Any of the new windows we put in will be wood windows. The front of the building has a sturdy square columns and a poured concrete platform and railing with turned balustrades. We're suggesting to get rid of those balustrades and to put in just square to accentuate the square column. The elevations will be more descriptive. The north side elevation says continuous shed dormer with exposed rafter tails, and any new roofing that we build will have exposed rafter tails. And then on page 12, it continues to talk about the building. The one thing that I wanted to point out is the landing at the front steps is poured concrete, and there is also a poured concrete walkway in the rear. We want to take out the steps that are poured concrete for two reasons. One is it's not really code compliant. The steps are very steep. We also are proposing to move them so they accentuate the front door. Again, when we look at the elevations, it'll be clearer. Page 13 identifies this as a contributing building. And then if we look at some of the pictures on pages 14 through 17. We have the front of the house and the side of the house that you would see from Park Boulevard on page 14. Page 15 shows the rear of the building. And again, I'm going to ask you when we're done with looking at these pictures that we're going to pull out the drawings and we're going to look at the before and after, because I think that really clearly identifies what we're doing. Page 16 just shows you some of the typical homes that are around the block, mostly older homes, mostly contributing homes. Page 17 shows you a picture across the street on the top, shows you a picture of the rear where we're doing most of the work. And then page 17 shows you one of the newer houses that is located adjacent to this. I want to stop for a minute on page 18. The first picture on the upper right indicates a non-contiguous additions. They were built over the years. There's an opening. It's sort of sloppy underneath. We want to clean that up. And just sort of tidy up this whole deck area in the rear. This will be one continuous one-story space that we're going to add. The upper right-hand corner actually shows a pop-out in the dining room. We're going to replicate that pop-out in the new master bedroom. We use that as our inspiration. If you look at the picture right underneath it showing the railing, that wrought iron railing was very popular, I believe, in the 60s and 70s. It's not period appropriate to the house. We want to change that. And then the lower left-hand picture, it's sort of hard to see, but these are turned railings. They always sort of remind me of like you know, a cowboy saloon type of railing. They don't seem to be appropriate for this type of house. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is just sort of flip to the back and pull out the drawings. The first drawing, I don't think we need to dwell on too much. But the first drawing is the proposed, is the site plan. The second sheet is the existing floor plans. And if you look at the first floor plan, you can see in the rear, there's a bathroom off to the left. There's sort of this open hallway that goes out to the rear deck. There's an existing bedroom. Then we have the existing elevations, which we can put to one side. The next sheet is the proposed plan. So what we're proposing to do is to take this area that's in the rear and sort of rework it. And that's what A4 is showing the plan of it being one contiguous space in the rear. But I think the drawing that really shows the most of what we're doing is if we look at the existing elevations and you put them side by side to the proposed elevations, which say new front right side, new front elevation. It says existing rear, but it's supposed to be.
The two on A5 should be new rear and new left side, right?
Yeah. There's a little typo here. But let's look at the new right side, which is on sheet A5, and then compare that to the existing right side. What we've done is we've added about 2.5 feet to the building, so it sticks out a little bit more. And we've also built a little pop-out that is similar to what's popping out in the dining room. If we look at the deck on the rear, it almost looks exactly the same with the addition, except with the addition of lattice going underneath. If we look at the upper left-hand corner, the front elevation, and then look at the existing elevation. We're proposing to take the concrete stair down, build a new stair that is a little bit easier rise, change the railings in the front, and move the stair so that the stair ends at the front door, not sort of in between, I don't know what. You know, it's sort of just, the staircase it just sort of ended. So I'm trying to make the front a little bit more organized and also easier to get up and down the stairs. Then finally, if we look at the existing rear, and I know it says existing rear, but it's meant to say new rear on page A5 and A3. If you hold these together and look at them at the same time, I think that you can see a remarkable improvement in the rear of the building. We have one roof. We're going to match the roof slope of the existing shed roof that's there now. We're pushing the air conditioning units off to one side and putting lattice around them. We're putting lattice underneath the whole deck. We're having one continuous railing and some nice French doors. Now, this is a little confusing, but I think that to look at the before and after is probably the easiest way to go through the elevations. And I think that's about it.
Terrific, thank you. I guess we'll go, I would make a comment. The front stair is a huge improvement. Thank you. I normally don't like square balusters, but when you have square columns, it makes sense. I'm always puzzled by having turned columns and square balusters and vice versa. So that was also an improvement. So I'm, well done, thank you. John, you want to start? You have a comment?
I don't. I think it's very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
B?
I don't have any either.
All right. Corbin?
I think it looks good.
Tom?
I'm sure you know that I always want to see the railings be 2 inches thick and have no more than 3 inches between the balustrades on the porches. You don't have a detail of that, but I think you're going that direction.
I think I do. I think if we go to page 23 of the booklet, which I forgot to bring to your attention, in the booklet, I have specifically shown a railing detail with 2x2 balustrades, 3-inch space,
Yeah.
and a 3-inch top cap.
The difference, Tom, is that she's read this more than you have.
Carol railing.
Yes.
I don't have a page 23.
Actually, you did that on purpose.
I really do like your lattice treatment on the front of the house too. When I was just looking at the first page, I said, "Gosh, I hope they're thinking of some plants out front of that too." But actually, that lattice is just really going to dress that up a lot. Yeah. I think it's a very, very well thought out plan.
Pip?
No, I have no comment.
Janice?
Yeah, I think it's great, and because it's on a corner, you do see the back, even though it doesn't exist. So I love that.
Great job with balance and symmetry on the rear.
Jim?
I guess this makes it unanimous. There really is no aspect that you have touched here that hasn't improved from what was there before. So it's just a substantial and vast improvement.
What shows like some separate little skinny lots on your survey there. I take it you own all that there. There's no other ownership in that triangle that comes off.
Correct, it's just us.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion?
One last question, please. I think I noticed that the zoning chart was incomplete. Just affirm to us that no variances are required.
We do not have to go for a variance. I just didn't get it, the zoning done in time for,
Right, I mean, we just want to make sure when you check that final box that it's really final, because there's nothing else to do.
okay.
Yeah, and you checked it, and you're good. So I would,
Do I have a motion?
motion to approve the application as submitted.
I'll second it.
See, you didn't have to be scared.
My father's so slow, by the way.
There's a lot there.
I think that was,
You never know.
Yeah,
it was a
Jay
tie.
McAleer?
Is it,
You know Jay McAleer?
oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
my dad. He's like, oh, tell Tom I said hi.
Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Yes. Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
You do love to get.
Next order of business, 817 Corgi Street, Block 1091, Lot 18. It's a contributing property and a rare addition.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman? I
Yep.
need to recuse myself from this conversation because I have a professional involvement with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rick Hoff. Excuse me. I'm the owner of the property. I hope you didn't use up all your warm and fuzzy feelings on the last application. What we're proposing is an addition off the back of my home. And as John recused himself, I don't have an architect up here now, nor have I decided on a builder, but I think what we proposed when looking at the properties around us and no need for any variances, it's really just this, let's call it a great room, but just one more room. I've retired full-time, and my wife's decided that she needs one more room in the house so we're both not in the same room all the time. We're not proposing anything that I don't think is going to be in any kind of conflict with the HPC. We're matching the existing home. We're windows, cedar siding is all going to match the existing home. And you have everything that I have. I think the best picture is if we look at A 1.1, it shows my property and the neighboring properties. The homes on either side are a little bit larger, but ours is not going to be quite that big, but it's, 320 square feet, so it's not a big addition. If you look at A2, it just shows our existing home and what we're proposed on the great room. And it's basically just going to be 6 windows, all wood, gelled wind windows, and 2 French doors off the, excuse me, and 1 door where the existing home meets the proposed addition. But again, the doors and windows are all going to be gelled wind wood. A3 kind of shows the size of it, excuse me, and the rear elevations and both sides elevations. So I think it's pretty straightforward. And I really don't have anything else to add unless you have any other questions.
Before we open it up for questions, your application is marked conceptual as opposed to final.
Correct.
And why is that? Is there any zoning questions here?
No.
It seems to me that this would be a final.
Right.
It has
Plans with
The
dimensions.
full construction
Okay.
plans. Full construction plans.
Yeah, the plans with dimensions. Yes, sorry.
But is it not possible for us to treat this as, or maybe not, I was going to say as final, but require the submission as a condition of, I think we've done that before. Granted final, condition the approval on submission of full construction plans, and those can be reviewed by the review committee.
For this project, I would think that that makes sense. I mean, it's a modest addition.
Precisely.
And concealed from the street, et cetera, et cetera. So we should have a final, because then we have a resolution. And review committee could look at the final.
There's no way you wouldn't consent to making this a final application as opposed to conceptual, right?
I'd be happy to.
Well, we'd be happy to do it for you.
Are you're in agreement, Mark? I'll change your copy.
Thank you.
If you look at our new standards about adding additions to an existing house, this couldn't be better done.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, discrete.
all sides of it are hidden by the front.
Hidden from
It's
streetscape,
lower,
discrete.
It's not higher. It just fits in perfectly.
Yeah.
It's probably even a better example of what we want than the one in the book, but.
You would think it was
Follow that
designed by
very
a qualified architect.
Yeah.
Also, the streetscape photos are much better than we usually get.
Yes.
You actually see it in context, which is one of the big issues we have.
So you see the warm and fuzziness just continue.
Absolutely, and in that spirit, I would make a motion to grant this application final approval, but subject to the delivery of full construction plans to be reviewed by our review committee.
I'll second that motion.
All right. Thank you very much.
I think we have to vote on it first. That does require democracy to.
Mr. Cogswell.
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we're all in the Thanksgiving spirit.
Evidently. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's only 7:10.
Next order of business is Ramo, 266 Grant Street, Block 1019, Lot 7. It's a non-contributing property. This is going to be a two-part presentation. This is also the same address. One is a demolition, and then the next is a new house. Welcome back, Catherine.
Okay, I'm Catherine Lorenz, architect, and I'm representing Jim and Carol for these two applications. The first one will be the demolition. Is there anything that you want to say?
No, just I've been coming here since 1965 with my family, and we bought this house 4 years ago, and it's a joy. The issue is we've gotten 3 new grandchildren, and it's not big enough for all of us. Not that we want it too big. It's not. But 2 babies in one 10 by 12 room, it's not, and parents.
So this is a completely different type of presentation from the last one.
This is
I'd
the
like
demo,
to
right?
pull out,
Are we doing the demo first?
we're going to do the demolition.
Should be first.
First.
Yes? Yes.
So we need the 9 points.
I know, but before I give you the 9 points, I thought I could explain something.
What you're knocking down.
Because it's a complicated project, and if you look at this sketch that was in the front of your booklet, we are doing 3 things here. The front of the house, which is identified by this black arrow, which is a little Cape Cod. which was built in the 50s or so, which is non-contributing, which is way below the flood line, we are requesting to demolish this building. What's indicated by blue is an addition that was added about 10 or 15 years ago, and we're going to raise this 2 feet so that it is within the FEMA requirements. And then the garage is going to stay. So I just wanted that clarification. Do I need to go through the entire booklet or
need-
just the 9 points?
For the demo, we need 9 points.
Okay.
Actually,
So the 9 point.
7 of the 9 points.
7, okay, well, I answered
Yeah.
2 extra then. There are, let me find out, it's right in the back. I have the 9 points in the back. Yeah, very good, thank you. Okay, because I thought I had to go through everything.
This is one of the few presentations where the criteria are actually set forth in your application and you answer them, so you might as well just testify to that effect.
Okay, so the 9 points, the criteria for the application of the demolition or move a historic site, place, or structure of the following matters shall be considered. Number 1, its historic, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic significance. As described in the property report, the main block of this 1.5-story colonial revival residence indicates the property was not developed until 1945 or 1956, which is after the period of significance. Number 2, its current and potential use for those purposes currently permitted by this chapter or for the use proposed. As stated, this house is too small to serve its purpose. The rooms are broken up. There's limited head height in the 2nd story. Also, as stated in the property report, the house has been added in the rear in 1970 to 1987 and in 2007 and 2008. And the garage was added in 1987. It will continue to be used as a residence, but fit into the historic character of the neighborhood when you see the new design. Number 3, its importance to the municipality and the extent to which its historical or architectural value is such that its removal would be detrimental to the integrity of the historic property or district and the public interest. Again, as per the property report, this is a non-contributing property by virtue of the building's construction date, and it is after the period of significance. This building has no historical or architectural value. Number 4, to extent to which it is of such old, unusual, uncommon design, craftsmanship, texture, or material that it could not be reproduced or could be reproduced only with great difficulty. As per the property report, this is non-contributing. This building has no historical or architectural value. Number 5, to the extent to which its retention would increase property values, promote business, create new positions, attract tourists, students, writers, historians, artists, artisans, attract new residents, encourage study and interest in American history, stimulate interest and study in architecture and design, educate citizens in American culture and heritage, or make the municipality a more attractive and desirable place in which to live. Again, I'm going to say see the property report. In addition, this building is sitting below the requirements of FEMA, and thus it is a detriment to the neighborhood. It would become a hazard to its neighbors during a hurricane or a flood. Number 6, the impact of its removal upon the historic district. As per the property report, it's non-contributing. This building has no historical value. Number 7, the structural soundness and integrity of the building and the economic feasibility of restoring, rehabilitating the structure so as to comply with the requirements. See the property report? The building is sitting below FEMA's required height. And again, it is a detriment to the neighborhood. It was built before the hurricane rules and regulations and is a danger to its neighbors. 8, 9?
They don't apply.
Okay,
Those are-
I answered them anyway, but they don't apply.
Move a
Okay,
property, they apply.
okay. So, I could go on about this building not fitting in on this block. This is Grant Street. There are some historic homes across the street. There's some new ones down the block. I guess if you have any questions.
Now you're taking my job. I'm supposed to ask if there's any questions or observations. This is pretty clear presentation. Thank you. Unless there's questions or comments, do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that we permit the demolition of the said property. Partial demolition.
Do I have a-
Partial demolition.
It's easy for you to say.
3 syllables, Tom.
Or. Do I have a second?
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Ms. Bisagno. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next order of business. How do you pronounce your?
Ramo.
Ramo.
And thank you for your previous.
Next order of business is Ramo, 266 Grant Street, Block 1019, Lot 7. This is a non-contributing, it's a new house. So, we have who?
Catherine Lorenz, architect, representing the Ramos.
Thank you.
We're looking for conceptual approval on this application. We will have to go in front of the zoning board, as this is an undersized lot, and we're going to request for a slight increase in FAR. So I have attached this with paper clips, and I have a drawing in the back that I think will be important as we discuss the design concept of the addition. If we remember prior, we're going to leave the rear of the house and just elevate it. But we're going to build a new front of the house. And this diagram indicates its neighbors, which are non-historic. And if we look at the blue line is grade. So you can see that there are 2 houses on the right that are sitting on grade. The yellow dotted line is the flood height that we need to be at. The red dotted line is what the neighbors on either side, not down the street, not across the street, which is 3 stories, but right next door. And then the black dotted line indicates the maximum height that we are allowed to go. We are not going to exceed, we are about 6 feet or so below the maximum height that is allowed. So I wanted to just bring this to your attention as I go through the application page by important page. And the cover sheet shows the style of house that we're proposing, a sort of a contemporary, but not contemporary, craftsman-style house with a front porch, a metal roof, railings, and some dormers on the side. When you see the other drawings, you'll have a better understanding of what's going on at the sides. So I'm gonna go through the pages, starting with number 2. We're going for a conceptual approval. We talked about demolishing the Cape Cod house that's there and the middle addition. And we're going to build a new 2.5-story beach cottage is what I'm calling this. The rear portion of the building will remain. If we go to page number 3, I'm proposing to use diamond-shaped asphaltic shingles, hardy board for the fascia.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yes.
Maybe a look around the room. What we look for in new construction is a contemporary interpretation of one of the designs that's in the standards book. And does anyone have a reaction? What would this be? You called it a cottage, but I'm not sure that I see a contemporary interpretation of one of the styles.
I would say it's got a combination of elements, a sort of a Palladian window in the top 3rd floor, definitely a colonial thing, groupings of windows, multiple window panes up and single down. It's probably about the mixtures of colonial Dutch and things like that in the beginning of the 20th century would be one of the best ways to look at it.
But the problem with that is it's not an contemporary interpretation of one of the styles in Cape May.
No, yes.
I mean, attractive houses and suburban houses are attractive, but we're trying to keep the features as more focused on one of the styles in the standard book. And I'm not sure that we're there.
Well, I personally, I see it really as quite symmetrical and closer, I think, to what Tom mentioned, which is that it has, to me, colonial elements. I have a problem with the huge dormers, which turn it at least straight on into a big box, big, tall, vertical box. But when seeing the facade without those dormers, which are admittedly back on the roof line and not at the front, to me, it looks very much like it's an attempt to be colonial. The symmetry on it, to me, looks colonial, if I had to give it a name. So I don't find that it's that far from,
The question is not whether it's attractive. I mean, that's not what we're looking for, but
I don't see, I don't think imitating a style is something we
I didn't say imitating, I said conceptual.
And
Contemporary interpretation.
The scale, the massing, the relationship to the streetscape is very important, and I think that's been considered. I do think the design of new construction is an interesting challenge, because imitation isn't desired, so you're looking at an interpretation, and I'm not sure I understand what we're going to like until we see it.
I have a mathematical question for you. What is, although you're below the maximum roof height, what is that difference between the proposed roof height and the average of the streetscape companions?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Okay, I know you're below maximum height, and you show you're above the average. Please tell me the number of feet you are above the average of the streetscape companion house.
Oh, well, I was showing you in a sort of graphic way the immediate neighbors of the house.
Oh, I get that.
There are houses right across the street, which I have two here, that are 3 stories. Now, take into consideration that none of these houses are above flood, okay? So
I
they,
understand the squeezy as you go up and down, but just tell me what that number is, please.
well, I can't tell you exactly what that number is. I would only be guessing what that number is.
All right.
Okay, the house right now is I believe 35 feet, and the maximum is 40.
Okay, carry on. We've interrupted you, sorry, but
I also think if you look at the A3, which shows the front elevation, and it also shows the sides. The dormers that you were saying that look so massive,
Yeah, they do, but they're farther back.
they're much smaller. They're in the back, and so maybe if I did on our next go-around, did a 3-dimensional rendering of the building, it would better demonstrate that it isn't a square box.
Yep.
It's really more of a gabled roof with some dormers sticking out. Almost craftsman style.
And I think what you're telling me is if I stand in front of this and look up and back, I'm going to see those dormers as much less significant because they're farther back in my sight, rather than the front elevation straight ahead, in which they appear to be very large and create the big rectangle. Because when seen straight ahead, that height, the lack of width and the height just strike me that those dormers are very large. I realize what you're saying. You're saying that seen from the street and given their distance back on the roof, they will appear smaller.
And we've also made the dormers not go up quite as high as the roof. We've brought the dormers down 1.5 feet from the peak.
Which is very clear on A3. The dormers do not go all the way up to that roof line, whereas the rendering on the front makes them look like they're right up there at the roof line, or even taller because you're looking up this way.
It's also very interesting, this part of the street, the houses on the other side of the street are much closer to the road than our side of the street, so there's much more of a setback. And it happens to be the ones across from us are really 3 stories, so I think it will help it look further back and not look as big, because of the setback.
it appears that, by the way, it appears that it would be about 4 feet higher than the other houses.
Than the immediate neighbors. But I'm hearing that if you look overall at the street, in addition to the streetscape neighbors on each side, the whole perspective is that there are taller buildings across the street, for example. So it's not going to be the only building up at that height. I understand.
The only building within a series.
Of 3 or 4, yeah.
And the challenges you had mentioned earlier, somebody had said that, you know, by going up to the 10 feet, you're already starting at a certain level, and obviously the other homes are not at that level, they're at grade.
Yeah.
So, but you want it to be safe for everyone, you gotta, the flood's important.
And then if we walk about 4 more houses going towards the beach, there are some really big houses there, and this looks quite modest in comparison to those big ones that are already built and being built.
So what's the set between the two buildings on either side? How much setback is there?
Well, on the left side, we're going to have about to the roof, we have 11'6", and then on the right side, we have 6'4". We're sort of we're trying to line up with that existing rear addition that was added in 2017. So the right side is 6'4", and then the left side is large enough for a driveway.
Are you talking about side or front setback? Side. And the front setback is?
Oh, the front setback. We did, the front setback, we did the averaging. So we have an averaging survey, and we are allowed to be what we are at, which is to the roof line, which I know now that rule is just changed. But we are from the lot line to the front of the house is 18 feet. We're allowed to be at 15 feet 6.
How's it compared to the houses on each side?
Well, we've compared 4 houses on the block, so we're the mean average of the 4 houses that are contiguous to us.
I interrupted, so Pick, you didn't get the answer to your
No,
question.
she gave me the answer. I was interested in side setback,
Side
and
setback.
you told me that.
And I was interested in the front, so anyway.
I just wanted to say, though, the illustration here really, it makes it look like it's closer to the other house.
It does.
So when you look at this, right away, you say, geez, this is right up on their neighbors.
We're great friends with both sides.
But, but this gives you the wrong impression.
With this, you'll be able to you'll be able to pass things out your window.
Yeah.
You were close friends.
No, we're always
Yeah, the driveway is on the, as you're looking at the house, on the left side of the house, so that's where you
Right.
have like 11, 12 foot.
Yeah.
The other side's grass on both sides between the two of us. Be hard to get back to the garage with this.
Exactly, yeah, true.
Go ahead, Catherine, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess the best way to understand what's going on in the building, I mean, I could go over the materials, they're the required and approved materials that I've worked on in the past in new buildings. It would be hardy board, it would be Anderson windows. We would have brick veneer at the base. I don't know that, I think you all are familiar with this building. I mean, we have, the drawings, I guess, are the most important aspect of the presentation. I could go over individual materials if you like. We do have comprehensive streetscape drawings that start at page 16, and you can see the variety of homes that are on this block. Page 16, page 17 shows a mansard roof, shows a sort of a bungalow, shows our house. Page 18 shows another kind of house. I'm not really sure what you would call that style, but it's a wood shingled house. There's our little Cape Cod. Page 19 shows the rear that we're proposing to keep with the spiral staircase, page 820. We don't need to get into the zoning data. The windows are going to be Anderson, brick veneer, and then the diamond-shaped roof. If we look at the site plan answers your questions about the location of the building. The main entrance would most likely be in the rear, even though we have a front steps. The plan shows The new addition abutting the raised rear family room, that would be A1, shows the second floor with 3 bedrooms. A2 shows the third or half a floor, which has 2 bedrooms, but they are just at the required height of 8 feet. The rest of the roof slopes down, so that is not habitable space. And then I guess the thing to really focus on, because I'm not sure that this has much, the style that I was sort of looking at was a sort of craftsman type of style. The rear of the house would be like a sunroom that would have been added to the house. The front of the house would be cottagey. So I guess the only aspect that I've heard so far is the dormers look too massive for the front of the building. And I'm not sure what Warren's...
So I can try. I'll give it a shot. I'm struggling with this as well. I'm trying. So my sense of it is very much in agreement with Warren. It doesn't feel like it fits. It doesn't feel like it's compatible. So I've been sitting here and after this afternoon and this evening trying to figure out why is that. I'm not sure I have an answer, but I'm going to give it a shot. All right. So I would like to read what our new standards talk about with regard to compatibility, because I think that's where I might be able to maybe help a little bit. Compatibility with historic materials, features, size, scale, proportion, and massing. Compatibility is emphasized over differentiation. And in fact, it's an HPC priority that compatibility requires more than similarities of massing or abstract references. So it's the abstract references bit that I think we can maybe talk about a little bit. It must be a primary objective of the design professional and an integral part of the design process for projects in the district. So for example, I can see that you, in a way, you're mimicking the yellow house on the right by putting a single penetration in the middle and 2 larger penetrations on each side. Unlike what Craftsman probably would have been. Furthermore, I think that the idea of these 3 massive projecting beam elements, a couple of little roof pieces, I see what you're saying about the front maybe being more articulated than it appears to be. It looks like there's more layers to it. In a Craftsman house, those layers would have been much deeper. They wouldn't have been so close to each other and appear to be a single mass, would be much more articulated. And all the pieces that are put together, it feels like the pieces are kind of added on as opposed to integral to the massing and the way shade and shadow would hit, particularly the front facade. I don't know if that's helping or not, but it seems like there are little pieces of elements that are kind of postage stamped on it as opposed to an overarching, I would say, articulation of the various layers, particularly at the front of the house. Because that Craftsman idea probably never would have had an entire gable over the entire front of the house that was the entire 32 feet width of the house, right? So if you look at the photos that you showed, it's really interesting because these 2 photos, to me, really helped me try and figure out how could I even talk about this, right? So this one, which is clearly not Craftsman, it's very, very formal. The windows are all more vertical than they are wide. It's very symmetrical. It's very clearly 3 bays, and each of them are identical. Probably not what you're going for. On the other hand, the one next to it is completely asymmetrical and is all kinds of different articulations of different elements that create that variant layering that would have been very consistent with that particular style of house. What I'm seeing here is neither of those, nor is it Craftsman in my mind. And one other way that I think that starts to appear is if you look at elevations on A3, the left side elevation, and it's particularly the 2 windows in bedroom 1, and A3, the 2 windows in bedroom 4 on the right side elevation. They're only about 16 inches high, but 3 bays wide, little awning windows. That too seems completely incompatible with the kind of historic fabric that I think we're looking for in the historic district. And I'm kind of throwing a bunch of stuff on the wall here because I can't quite get to what I'm just trying to help. And this is as far as I can get with it.
I see. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I want to throw one other thing in
Sure.
with this. So this block is a real hodgepodge of houses.
Oh, it is.
There are all kinds of different, I mean, there's not one style. It's not like if you went down one street, everything would be a Queen Anne, or if you went down another street, they would be all, like right around on Windsor, you have all of those little bungalow kind of things.
I'm with you. So, for example, the house to the right or to the left, right? I would not imitate that house, right? Because that house doesn't feel anything historical at all. Yet the proportions of the windows that you're showing on your front facade are almost identical to that house to the left. So that was a clue to me that the context of its historical fabric would not be that house to the left, and this, for the most part, with the exception of the gable in the front, appears to be more like this house than the more historical houses in your context.
Could, I would add that I think to solve some of this, if we look at page 84, it's a bit of a stretch at first, but if you look at some of the details, this is a shingle style.
Yeah.
If you eliminate that window configuration up at the top, you take those beam-looking brackets out. I don't know what this porch thing is in the front.
Standing seam tin roof.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It looks like glass.
Do you prefer that?
Yeah,
or
it looked
do you
like a
prefer
glass
regular
porch.
shingle?
And
Is there a preference?
it seems like if you were to, because it does have a steep pitch, which is consistent with the style, and do cedar shingles, I think you begin to get a contemporary interpretation of a shingle style house.
Did you say like a less steep roof? A more flared out roof, is that what you're?
No, I said a steeply pitched hip gable or gambrel roof is typical of a shingle style. So it just seems like we may be closer than you think, but.
So in other words,
I don't know how long this would last, or physically last, or how important it is, but on that street is where the train came through. So on the right-hand side of the street, which is like this house here, right, this greenhouse, like on the right-hand side of the street are the older houses, and on the left-hand side of the street are all the newer houses, because they didn't get built until they took the train out. So those are all newer houses, right?
Yes.
And much more modern houses, and the ones on the right-hand side are the Victorian ones that were built before that.
so maybe what would help would be to find a house that your clients like its look and its image, that would be of almost an inspirational place to start. Because in some ways, the smaller moves here feel like a lot of little moves, and there's not an overarching conceptual, larger scale move that seems consistent for the entire compatibility of this historic district. And I think what Warren's trying to help you with is that even though the ones on page 87 are pretty massive, maybe finding one that you guys like as an inspiration or as a place from which you could derive a modern interpretation of something that you're already looking at.
I think you're close on, if you look at.
Shingle
you look
style.
at that shingle style, well,
Yeah.
you got square columns.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have?
We were wondering what you were saying.
I said, I don't think shingle style would have ever been there in the 1950s and the 1940s.
No.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no. The idea is to is to get some kind of a contemporary interpretation of one of the styles.
So it's funny, when I looked at this, I thought it was trying to be bungalow, right? But it's a big bungalow, like 3-story bungalows, right? How would you do that? And that might be kind of a fun exploration as well, because that would require a significant breaking down of the scale.
We're just trying to.
Yeah, tough.
I think it really comes off as a really big box. Straight up, sides going back, and I think trying to put a little bit more style in this, John's suggestion of a little bit different window arrangement and changing of elements as you go through it, could come along with stick style, craftsman, bungalow. There's a lot. Pip's right that there was no shingle style houses built there after the railroad left, but that and craftsman style is probably one of the most used styles coming back in Cape May because of reasonable construction, handsome lines that can come along with it, and it's a popular revival. And I think this could have a little bit more of that flavor that you see with the craftsman style houses. Some of it is, like the design of the porch with a heavy base and a, different size column going up. The materials, cedar shake on it could really do an awful lot to give it character. I think if those dormers did drop down even more, so the house had more of a peak look to it, and the dormers were a little bit lower, maybe a little bit less steepness in the roof. I think if you play with some of those elements, I think you could probably be answering a lot of the concerns that we have around the table. You can tell from look at this, it's going to look like a really big house compared to its neighbors.
A really high house, maybe.
Well, I think that's the point I was trying to make before. You're going to go to flood level, so it's going to be elevated to modern standards. So you have to do that, and you want to get in 3 stories. There seems to be very little choice when you do that, other than to have a high house. You have a relatively narrow lot, so it's getting that verticality. That's one of, and the fact that it got square with those dormers troubled me. I don't know that we're being super helpful here, because I think that it's got a lot of really good elements. I think doing it in shingle, in cedar shingles, would be a vast improvement to this house. But I'm afraid and I don't feel really qualified to give you the same kind of expertise as some folks on this board do. But it is, I don't think it's all that far from what I would find.
I would agree. I think there's some things we could do to help.
You could reduce the number of windows. Instead of having 3 together, have 2 separated a little bit. So that you have, it just looks like, I often quail about too few windows in the sides of houses. And this, I think, have too many windows in the front, where if you look at some of them, they do have maybe 2 windows in each room in the front, but they're separated. Give them a little wall space between them.
With 5 windows.
I'm getting 2 different,
That's Williamsburg or something.
I'm getting like different things going on here, because it's sort of like a beach bungalow, but then I'm getting the feeling of a shingle style. Cedar shake is going to be a lot more expensive than hardy board. Would hardy board shake? I'm trying. I can see I got to go back to the drawing board. Okay. The one thing that we did try to do on purpose is to make the house not as high as we're allowed to do because of the massing. Because we have to raise the house because of the flood.
Got it. So maybe that's it then. Given the tight lot and the requirement for it to be so high because it's so lifted, doing anything you can to increase the articulation of surfaces as opposed to a single front surface, I think would be really helpful.
A little
In and out. Yeah.
Yeah.
More like,
In and out, yes.
right.
Okay.
I have to say, Catherine, that's my impression too, that it really, it's too flat, and the third floor window looks out of place to me. And I think we love the porches, we love the dimensionality of a front building to kind of invite you in to sit on the porch. So like maybe instead of a standing seam roof, you have a deck there. I don't know. I'm not an architect, but I just know when I look at this drawing, it looks too flat.
It reads too flat.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, all right. It's sounding to me that I
And
gotta.
I think I get what you tried to do by the little pieces I was talking about. That's where you were seeking, I think. I don't want to read your mind, but I bet that the seeking of articulation was with the smaller pieces. I think they're bigger moves.
Catherine, would you have a one-story in the back compared to 3 stories in the front? Suppose you, over the building that you're saving, took this building back a little bit further, and it looks like you have plenty of land back there to do it, and had those extra bedrooms that you're looking for over top of the family room, and then just put a really interesting roof, maybe attic, maybe just playroom, and a much lower roof on the 3rd floor.
It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma because I'm trying to get as much space as I can to satisfy the owner's needs, and I need to satisfy your needs. So this is a lot of information coming in here that I gotta, like.
It is, we're so helpful by bombarding you with extra information. But
It's a
but
great-
it really, a movement to take advantage of space behind would allow you, I think, to lower the roof by putting more to the rear side behind. So you really have a lower roof line, because it basically becomes a less than 3-story building.
I'm already over lot coverage, and I'm already over FAR. So.
Well, you're going for an exemption, for variance on FAR, right?
Eventually, we're going to go and to see if we can get a variance for this. Let me just ask one more thing, since we're going through. Does the height bother you in any way? I mean, you still think it's too high? You think a 2.5-story building that meets flood is inappropriate for this block? So you're denying the owners the right to go up,
I think
to
the
allow
issue
them to
is-
have a 2.5-story house?
What has happened here is to get 8-foot ceilings in the 3rd floor, you have this pitch, you have a 10-12 or pitch. And I understand that because you're trying to get a ceiling height of 8 feet, and the only way to do that is to project up. And what that does then is it just adds this increased height to the building, and then plus the flat facade. The dormers in actuality may look a little smaller when they're actually built, because they're sitting back a little bit. But that steep pitch is what's taking you over, and if you're going to try to get headroom in the 3rd floor, that's kind of what you have to do.
So if we were able to keep the height, but make the pitch, as in a craftsman-style house, they usually have, but don't forget, I can't go over a 4 and 12 pitch, because all of a sudden, that gets the zoning all crazy, like,
Well, we're working on that. We're working on it. And we're not talking about 4 12 pitch.
Yes, all right, so it'll be 5 and 12, but if I bring it out a little more, I mean, I understand the articulation. I disagree about the windows. I think more light is an advantage, and that's one of the biggest problems in many of these Victorian houses is they were dark and gloomy on the inside. So I have the opportunity now to bring some light in the house. Do I do it with 3 windows? Maybe I don't. Maybe I do 2 windows or fix that up a little bit.
I'm comfortable with the windows. I don't,
But maybe there's a way I can use the windows for
I
articulation.
understand Corbin's comment, but
And the teeny windows on the sides were there for a reason?
Yeah, we're getting rid of those teeny windows.
Okay, because that's my thing with your windows. Too teeny on the side. I have no problem with the facade.
When I was in architecture school and we had crits, we usually only had about 4 that would critique us. So this is really, I'm really like, this is a tough one here.
Only one who's an architect. Several who are pretending.
So
I would suggest we table this.
Okay.
And you've
Come
heard
back.
a lot of input, some of it contradicting each other.
All help.
You've got the standards book, so that would give you some ideas. And I think tabling it,
What is your time frame with respect to the application for the variances? What does that look like?
We needed your approval before we were going, or at least your conceptual approval. So I don't, right now, we haven't gotten into that, but, so we would table this and I come back with a new design and
yeah.
be old
and-
business.
And Bob has to explain to you what you have to.
Yeah, we would table it with your consent to waive the 45-day time period to take action on an application. So we can extend this past 45 days if necessary.
Oh, okay, all right, that's good, because we do have some holidays coming up. Yeah. All right, so table, it means that it might extend to 60 days.
It's up to you.
Okay.
When you are looking for variances because of the size of the building, it is also a message to the zoning board and our board that this is bigger than our designers of our master plans and zoning ordinances think a house should be to be compatible with the town. So if this thing did get reduced to the point that, you were not seeking variances, that would take a whole step out of this, and maybe you could go from here to into construction.
Well, it's an undersized lot, so we're handicapped
Yeah,
as compared to the neighbors' lots.
yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we need to go for the variance. If, I see what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
If we were to make it smaller,
Yeah.
we may not need to go for variance.
It has an underground creek that runs behind it, so our house is 10 feet shorter in the back than all our neighbors. Theirs goes back 150, ours go back 140.
Yeah.
So between trying to raise it up 10 feet because of the flood and then trying to fit it all,
Yeah.
as Catherine said from the beginning, it's a puzzle with a lot of different pieces.
Yeah.
We'll keep working on it.
Okay.
Well, you have a good
Well,
architect.
we'll have to make a motion to table.
Yeah, we
Motion to
need a
table.
motion.
I make a motion that the application be tabled, and we do have the owners and architects' consent to extend the 40 days.
Second the motion.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Testa. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Ms. Campbell. Mr. Cogswell.
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno. Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
And to you. Open to the public.
No public.
While we're waiting for the public, I want to add a discussion point. And some of the other discussion points you'll see, I think we can get through pretty quickly because we're going to have to set up some committees or something. The part that I'm going to add is the local historic district map. There's been some activity taken. We've been back and forth on this over the years. In 2019, for those of you who were here, we went through an exhaustive process of rationalizing the local historic district. So, all the way to the extent of having someone from the state join us and spend several days going over this. When it went to planning, it was not successful in getting it approved for reasons that weren't clear, but I think by some changes accomplish, and we'll accept it. So, having said that, what I'd like to do is distribute a map that the Historic Preservation Commission in 2019 approved unanimously, reflecting really a lot of hard work. And should we approve it, then the idea would be to take it back to planning. One of the problems that we have with the current map, as you all know, there's literally properties in the middle of this block that are not in the local historic district, and the house next door, the house on each side, is in the historic district. And for streetscape reasons, that's the whole motive of changing this. The overall dimensions of the the local historic district is pretty much within the existing boundaries, but it does fill in all these different gaps. John was good enough to get these printed out for me. These are so everybody can see them. Maybe it helps if you just put yourself here.
I know.
This is
This is the right
truly
side.
worthy of a Texaco map.
So as I said, it's easier to look at this one, but let's distribute these around.
Is this different than the map that was just recently done? How does this fit?
That's what has prompted this. There's so much confusion about this. The map that was, would you pass these to me? The map that was done.
Is that the map?
No, you have to forget the map that Paul did. With good intentions, it has never, I don't want to be critical, he meant well. The advantage of that map is he's colorized the contributing houses and key houses, and that's helpful.
Which could always be filled in at another time or for anything else. It's not the district.
I had a meeting with him, John and I, and the mayor met with him, and he, once we get this approved and get it through planning, he will,
Can we get one down here?
Yeah, we need a few
he
more.
will colorize this.
Yeah, sure, we'll use a
But
nice placement.
Okay. Yeah, so it's all nice, integrated, makes sense.
Thank you.
I need
Thank
one.
you.
Janice, if you just, yeah,
If you look at this entire map,
yeah.
my little thing is the only where there's one little,
Well, you're going to be,
It has a block.
I think we're all good now. We're all good.
but I mean,
So-
that's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't see that anywhere else.
I remember.
Yeah, there had to be some story
Oh, yeah.
behind that
Yeah.
zoning
Yeah,
designation.
yeah.
right?
Excuse me.
You're
Can you
RS or
close
you?
public
I'm
record?
R2,
R2.
but everything around
Oh,
is
yeah.
RS.
is
You're
ours.
gonna close it?
close public comment.
Thank you.
So it wouldn't have to go.
That was, I don't know when that was, 05 or 6 or 7.
So,
I think you need the gavel.
yeah. All right, let's, back on track. What this is This simply takes the map here with these gaps that aren't understandable, and it also puts back the promenade. So it doesn't really expand the footprint. It just cleans up the footprint. We want to clean that up for streetscape reasons, so that when someone comes before us, that goes through our rigorous process, and then their neighbor, who may not be in the historic district, just doesn't see us at all. So,
They just evened everything out.
It's a rationalization, isn't it?
yes.
This doesn't.
They just
Well, of course, this just stops at beach.
Right. This just includes the street.
Not the Strand.
Yeah, you want to draw something on the south side of beach.
Doesn't include the Strand, that would.
Yeah. Actually, it was intended to, so,
Because the Strand was in there up until about the time they built the convention center.
yeah, it was taken out so they could build the convention center.
Well, this is all
It should be extended
Yeah.
a little further.
So the question is, what we need to do to move this forward is decide, now we have to decide, do we want to put the promenade in or not? And if so, do we have a motion to accept this as the new?
Can I just ask a question real quick?
Yeah,
I know that Paul has been working on the maps. Has there been a discussion with him?
yes.
Okay,
You didn't hear. John and I, Paul, the mayor, Tom,
City solicitor,
city
Bob.
solicitor, we all had a meeting. This map was shown. The advantage of the map that Paul did was the colorization of the different contributing and key and things, but the boundary was not correct. It neither reflects the current or this one.
Okay.
And so, yes, we've met. Paul is aware that we're presenting this tonight. The mayor's aware that we're presenting it.
Yeah, I just knew that Paul was working on it, and I wasn't sure. Okay.
So what we really have here
Goes with a real
is,
uniform agreement that this is the direction. And I really think with that and the number of people that were there, the planning board would probably be very receptive to this coming back.
well, they're going to have some kind of, I mean, unless they're going to act arbitrarily, they're going to have some kind of a rationale to not approve a map that has a historic district in it that the Historic Preservation Commission believes ought to be the district. Well, I'm not sure of anything, Pip, but I'm sure that a map that's adopted by us is a map that's presumptively going to be considered seriously by the planning board. And to me, it's pretty clear what's happened here from what I saw over there, and that is that there's a rationalization filling in spaces that, I'll take your word for it, didn't make sense. And I can't see why they would make sense, because they're like little islands. And now we've got a solid,
If this is going to be changed, which I think is good, then I think it should mirror the boundaries, at least on this side, on the ocean side. It should mirror the boundaries of the historic district, the National Historic District, and the Landmark District, which is the high water mark.
This is, we had this superimposed, I forget some of it, this comes very close to the Secretary of Interior and New Jersey Historic Preservation. They have the entire city limit as the.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that their limit on the ocean side, their boundary on the ocean side is not Beach Avenue or Beach Street, and it's not the promenade, it's the high water.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I missed.
which is south of the promenade, right?
I agree.
Just south of the promenade, which is south of the promenade, high water mark.
Yes.
Yes, of course it's south, so I think that's what
It's,
this should
No, yes, I agree.
it would include all those buildings that are in the Strand, like McGlade's and the
Understood. No, understood.
No, in fact, I think in our conversation, we thought that this map included that, but we can get that added. I would agree,
I mean, it's bad enough that the local historic district, I mean, it would be so much easier for us, although I don't think this is ever gonna happen, but it would be so much easier for us if the National Landmark District and the local district had the same boundaries. But I know that that's probably not gonna happen, so it should happen where it can happen, which is on the ocean side, south of the promenade.
That makes perfectly good sense.
yeah, okay.
No reason to exclude it.
So the question is, and as I said, the state saw this and had agreed to it, so, but it's got to go back to the state again, because it's been several years. So the question is, if we add the promenade, which candidly I thought it just did, if we add the promenade,
But we're basically adding to the high water mark.
yeah,
When we go south, the district boundaries at the south would be at the high water mark, which, if I understand Pip correctly, is the place where the historic district is bounded on the south.
so,
If you want, I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion would be to adopt the map of the historic district as presented to the meeting, but with the modifications to the exhibit, by adding to the south of the district and including in the district that territory which is bounded up to the high water mark along the ocean front.
I think that would be, technically should be the mean high water mark.
Mean high water. If that's where the federal boundary is, mean high water is great. So that's my motion.
do I have a second?
Second it. Go ahead, Corbin.
I think Tom seconded it. Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Mr. Copeland?
Yes,
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno? Ms. Wilson-Strudick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we can't have erosion without our approval.
That's
true.
It's neither construction or demolition.
the other,
Demolition.
another discussion, oh, yes, hold on a minute.
When the map is finalized here, it'll come back to this commission for a vote to specifically reference the new map, and I'll do it by resolution.
Yes,
And that would be taken to the planning board?
Yeah, the intention is, that all boards will approve exactly the same map with the same date and same title on it.
So that'll have all the reasons why we're advocating for the boundary to be changed.
Yes.
Great.
I'm sorry, just so I understand it, but this map will go back to Mr. Hurlis and Palestina to add the mean high water mark. This map dated September 26, 2019 will be amended.
yes.
Okay, and then you'll present it again, or it'll just go via resolution, or will it come back to HPC? Is this a draft?
It's
This is a draft, then it'll be amended to add.
be amended, I don't think it has to come back.
So I think I can try and clarify this.
I think it has to do whatever Bob Feinberg says we have to do with it, which
Okay.
was, you said formalize it by resolution, right?
Yeah, you want to have that kind of a record for the planning board,
So-
they can see.
So they get a final map and a resolution that we vote on,
Okay.
or whatever we have to do
Thank
to
you.
produce the resolution.
The next item for the discussion is payment of bills. Judy, do you want to?
We'll receive the bills via email, a PDF of the bills in the email that I send out with the agenda, the draft resolutions, the minutes, and you also got a PDF of the bills.
Right. The bills were for payment of legal services.
And one other,
And
And for
anything
the-
else?
We sent to the printer the pamphlets. They were gone So we had more printed up. So there was a bill from Leader Printers in Wildwood Crest in there also.
I will move that we authorize payment of the bills for services rendered by our solicitor and by the printer for the pamphlets.
You making a motion?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Cogswell, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell? Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno? Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Thank you.
Conversation came up in one of these meetings about parking under the buildings. As you recall, you may recall, when we developed an ordinance that was passed and is in place to elevate historic buildings to meet FEMA requirements, that we restricted the use under those buildings to no parking, no storage, no living. The question then came up is on new construction. We as a group have never really approved a house on pilings or something because it doesn't fit our character of Cape May. But it's not in the an ordinance. And so the question is to create an ordinance that, for zoning, that doesn't permit new construction or rehab construction to allow parking under the buildings, even if there's room and things. So,
It would just be a revision of the existing ordinance, and it would just state, existing or new buildings if they're being raised.
so
That's something I can look into. I'll take a look at our current ordinance. I'll take a look at at a possible revision to that. Talk to our solicitor, and then go forth from there.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I mean, if we all believe that
Yeah,
you shouldn't be
that's
parking
right.
under buildings, I think it would be helpful because it would essentially establish that requirement by ordinance, and it wouldn't require us to have to stretch by streetscape ideas about new buildings filling in between old buildings, and basically it keeps you from having to do a belt and suspenders.
plus buildings that we don't see. So the idea is not to mimic some of the shore communities north of us. So, if you would,
What's the feeling of everyone here as far as parking under new structures?
we've been consistent.
Yeah.
And in our discussions, again, with the solicitor and the mayor and everybody else, they were supportive.
Yeah.
It just, it's an issue that we've been following
Okay.
ourselves.
Yep.
Fortunately, it hasn't happened in Cape May, so now we ought to take the next step to really correct it and
Okay.
get it into an ordinance.
I think there are buildings, though, that are new construction that have parking underneath them, because at the last meeting that we had, well, not just motels, but, which do have it, yes, but the last meeting that we had, they pointed out a picture that's in the design standards that has parking underneath
Yes.
it. And there's parking underneath buildings, I know 2 of them on Congress Street.
No, and there's a couple on Beach Drive, and we've hid them in that, the parking has to be on the side or in the back, and it's got to be in garage, and the doors, if you recall all that. But the issue is, I think some of that was under duress. It's not appropriate for Cape May.
I think it's fine to have the ordinance, I'm just bringing up the fact
Yeah.
that
It's pre-existing stuff.
within the last 1 year or 2 years, we've approved it.
Yeah.
Now, would this
can
affect a
think of a
building
few.
that, let's say it's a hotel going up, let's say Icona's building it, and they are going to have parking under the building with an entrance and an exit, but fully screened around it. Would that prohibit that? Because that would really change.
Well, the fact is, you probably won't be able to have a viable commercial property on the size of the lots we have, because they have to be elevated, they're large, there's no place else to do the mandated parking unless you put it under the structure. I'd be more concerned about residential parking. And that'd be my concern, not commercial structures.
We gave permission to La Mayor's to do it. Long, not a number of years ago.
And indeed, they have.
So you want to restrict it to non-commercial?
I would.
Well, the problem with that is then you get some small commercial.
No, I know, but I can't see the city council, other than being besieged by commercial operators who necessarily, to achieve their parking requirements, have to put cars under them. We only have a limited amount of space.
The issue, Lorraine, the issue is when you take this back, we're all in agreement. We're not looking at vision, all of a sudden a realtor is commercial building, so now we're going to park under that, or a bakery or something. I'm not sure how you word it in such a way that, some really large building may be acceptable. I don't know how you would put that.
Yeah, I know down the line they're talking about maybe affordable housing too, and you may have, by necessity, a large complex, so you would have to afford them.
Well, the affordable housing, though, won't be in a high-rise, I don't think.
Yeah, I remember a few years back, the Acme project, I know that was.
Yeah, which is still,
Yeah,
but they have a lot of room.
yeah, it's that new urbanism concept.
Well,
I'll take a look at the existing ordinance.
I think part of whether parking underneath the building also has to do with how high the building is, because you don't have to make the building be that high unless you want to park on it.
I think that was the intent of the ordinance.
But,
That's exactly it.
but I think our primary concern is streetscape. You want it to be pedestrian friendly, and if you walk down the street and are just looking at streets with nothing but garage doors, that's not Cape May, that's
or
down a little
just
further.
pilings.
Yeah,
Okay. So Lorraine, you'll look at that and then you'll get back to us. Conceptual approvals. This has been presented to us as a problem. The city management has presented this as a problem. It may or may not be an overwhelming problem, but it's a small problem. And as a result, I think that we won't be able to deal with it tonight, like in a general conversation. I think what we're going to need to do is form a committee to really take a look at it. And the issue is conceptual approval here, and then they go to zoning or planning or whoever, and they say they have approval. But the approval doesn't include, they don't fess up that the approval doesn't include a bunch of stipulations. So then zoning or planning or somebody will react to it like, well, the HPC approved it, and although we approved it with reducing in size, reducing this, changing that, I don't know how often that happens. But if it happens even once or twice, it's too much. So we have to come up with a clean communication, and I think Bob has thought about and drafted some things that goes with the approval of conceptual. But it seems like we might want to have a couple people Bob and a couple people take a look at it, rather than take all of us all the time, because once you get down in the weeds, it gets kind of confusing.
So the object is to provide some kind of evidence to the other board that we've taken action, but to be specific about the terms, or somewhat specific enough so that the other board isn't misled by thinking that it's just a all-out approval, unconditional and unshaped.
There is a letter that was developed, and the letter does all this disclaimer, and then the idea is to list the conditions. And at one point, it was recommended that Judy would fill that out. And I don't believe that's an appropriate burden on Judy. I think it's more appropriate on a legal.
So we had all kind of discussion about this summer in developing the standards and what this chart should be and how the chart should go and all this other stuff. And somewhere, I don't know, is it in an ordinance? Is it in the ordinance somewhere? It says that the Planning and Zoning Board shall receive a report from the HPC or something. Maybe I might be making that up. I don't know if that's right.
The zoning board annually prepares a report of what variances they've granted during the year, and that goes to I think, the planning board and governing body, to help them develop, revise their zoning ordinance. They have to. I don't think there's anything specifically about what we do on an annual basis.
I'm probably misremembering. But I don't understand why, if somebody comes here and asks for a conceptual approval because they have to go to the zoning board or because they have to go to the planning board, I don't understand why we can't send whoever does it a little report that says these people.
Well, I think that's what we're talking about.
That's what
We're talking about, I mean, you could see a document called something like evidence of conceptual approval, and it would do what a resolution did, except it's.
Not misinterpreted by
And-
the person that
and it has
doesn't
it.
want to.
And it has a
Who lives
narrative.
in Cape May and knows how to do this in spades.
Well, no, we had one where, one of our favorite people, on a large property, a large building that we agreed conceptually, but that it had to be reduced in size, it had to be set back, and this and that, one thing and another, went to the zoning and said that we approved it without talking about it.
That's why we need to have written documentation that comes from us.
And you have something, but it just seems rather than have all of us do this.
Oh, you can't. It's an administrative type matter. And once we've passed on the conceptual approval, and Warren, I don't see why, if it's clear when we condition it. I mean, conceptual approval is granted. Our suggestions, I mean, like with Catherine tonight, there was so much you couldn't possibly record. But if there was a conceptual approval granted, and there are some pretty clear things that are conditioned to that approval, I don't see why that's different from our final resolution where we've stated the 5 or 6 conditions.
Well, we don't have a resolution.
No, what I mean is the concept is you have evidence of the conceptual, you state the things that it's subject to, and frankly, if that's done and it's proved and it's
Right now, we're working on, and Chris Gildenschwartz has developed a draft at this point of a letter that will incorporate that with conceptual approval and whatever appears in the minutes.
Yeah.
And so that we have a record.
Yeah, to my way of thinking, that's the job that a secretary does in terms of confirming and certifying to another board. So I don't really see a reason why, once we go through the procedures, the secretary of the commission can't issue that document with the proper attachment. I mean, to me, it seems it's administrative. All the secretary does is faithfully reproduce what the board has approved. I mean, that's just my thought at this point. Obviously, you want to,
And both secretaries for the boards work in the same office. It would be pretty easy communication with them.
I mean,
The problem is that it is an additional burden on Judy that has legal ramifications that I think,
I mean, she's,
I think the solicitor is taking notes, knows what the issues are. It's already, it's going to be a form letter, the paragraph. But at any rate, my point was,
it's a good point. We need to provide evidence of the limitations on our conceptual approval.
group, a couple people to work on it. So I need a volunteer.
Well, yeah, it's like a certification.
I have no problem working on it. I can work with
So,
Chris.
so we have one volunteer. I need another volunteer to work with Bob and Chris.
Well,
Should be a lawyer.
since the lawyers should outnumber the politicians, I'll volunteer to work on it.
Jim, it took longer for you to volunteer than I thought. But
Well, because you volunteer me for so many things.
So Warren, just one comment. It seems to me, I agree, that the source of the letter coming from the solicitor's office carries more weight than coming from the secretary's office.
Disagree completely, but that's not tonight's point.
Say it again?
I disagree completely, because an officer of this board certifying to another board that this is what it is, it's a completely dependable, ordinary document. Secretaries of corporations do this all the time. Certified minutes, certified resolutions, I mean, it's what they do.
Well, but there's another part of it that's appealing to me if it's coming from the solicitor. Therefore, it is actually in the solicitor's office. What precisely were the conditions of the approval of the conceptual?
Well, there are a lot of complications.
It's for the committee, never mind.
When a lawyer writes a letter like that, it's possible to construe it as an opinion.
Somebody needs to be on the committee to fight with him.
That's really not where I think we want to be. But I don't want to argue this tonight.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
So Jim and Lorraine and Bob, and Bob, you'll take the lead on contacting Chris. Get around the table. You see what some of the issues are. Should be easy to figure out. And then come back.
There's a draft of a document started already?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And it's good. It's a paragraph that explains what it is and why we're doing it. And then, by definition, then it leaves space to go bullet 1, 2, 3, 4.
Just a question, too. Stephen Smolin sits on the HPC and Planning or Zoning in Hoboken. I wonder if they have some sort of a process.
I don't know. We don't want to pay them.
No, but I'm saying they may have an interagency memo form or something.
We can create anything as good as Hoboken.
Hey, they got better pizza up there, that's for sure.
Yeah. We might be making a camel out of a horse.
I'm sure what will be produced will go down the road to solve the problem.
Locale. Or just beside it.
See?
Get the agenda, the length of the agenda.
Warren?
Getting him involved. My point was maybe they have a document that they use and then he said.
The HPC.
And it may, just as a sample, it may work.
Yeah, and how much time?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We have yet one more item here. HPC agenda. The issue is, Bob has a regular speech about when we have to close new business, accepting new business.
No new business after 10:30 and no comment testimony after 11.
And that seems a bit much to me. And so I think, interestingly enough, we have bylaws, which,
Which may by the end of the year actually be revised.
might be.
Heard that for 3 years now.
But, well, I've only had it for one.
So, once again, the issue is, what do we want it to be? It's 8:30, we've been going for 2.5 hours. Is 2.5 hours, 3 hours would be a lot, I would think.
We,
Law of diminishing returns, that's it. It really does.
Yeah.
Why don't we move it up to 9:30, the last one, and 10 if we have?
I honestly think, B, that's pretty late. I mean, I'm used to doing 24 hours and round the clocks. But I would say that, and I would argue that we should set these limits by resolution, not write them into bylaws because we want to be flexible enough in case that changes. But I mean, my personal view is that 9 o'clock is a sweet spot. And no new business after 9 o'clock. But I'd also think that maybe, if you set it earlier, there has to be some flexibility on, because that's the new business with respect to the applications. We get in some pretty extensive discussions after that. So what are we capturing? Are we saying no applications after X? No.
We have two limits at the moment. Of accepting a new app.
Yeah.
And then not discussing it
Cutting off, yeah.
at 11.
What I would, just personally speaking, I'd call a 9 o'clock curfew, but I would give the chair flexibility to call it earlier, to modify the agenda. If there's something that justifiably it's going to take us later, I'd give the chair the power to do that.
the times that we currently have, 10:30, 11, were developed when the meeting started at 7.
I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
We're tired at 9 rather than 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we were tired at 9 by then because we'd had a full day's of work ahead.
So it makes sense to reduce the timeframe. Still, the question is, how many applications should be listed for any one night? Because we know it's rare, but there are times that we know we're not going to reach all of them. And what other boards do, if they're in that situation, they simply tell the applicant, we're full for that night, you'll have to come back the next month. Or we'll put you on the next month to begin with, not even the first night. So.
Right, I mean, that's another whole aspect, should we pre-limit the agenda?
And we also met twice a month, too, that when business was developed.
That's true.
So if we got to that point, they only had to wait 2 weeks for the next meeting.
Well, once in a while, Judy brings to my attention that there's a lot of apps, and then we'll shut it off. But I think we need something a little bit more specific and maybe allow it to be flexible. I don't need to spend any more hours looking at applications to make a judgment as to whether we can deal with it or not.
I mean, if we.
As you know, we see some applications that go pretty quickly. Other ones that seem innocuous takes us an hour and a half or something. So I think limiting it by number is.
So if the old time frame was 7 to 10:30 for new business, 11 o'clock, no more comments, and we're starting an hour earlier, why don't we just move everything back an hour? Make it 9:30 and 10.
That to me is still far too long.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a couple of meetings where we've been here after 9:30.
We have, and I think, well, to sort of step back for a moment, I think that we ought to think about how long it's been taking us to do an average application. I would say we're probably in the 20-minute to half-hour range. So I would think about limiting an agenda to like 6 or 7 applications as the cutoff point. That would be one suggestion for limiting the agenda. And as for hours, I think 9 o'clock is a fair time.
Or 3 hours.
For 3 hours.
3 hours.
For 3 hours.
And we can even start
yeah,
earlier if we
I
wanted
meant
to.
3 hours. It's
Yeah, we could
6 plus
start
3.
earlier if we wanted to.
And that would be for new business, but then we'd have another half hour after that for comments that, like we're discussing now, right?
To conclude.
Correct.
Yes.
Fair enough.
We're almost out of time.
Don't make us stay the extra 20 minutes.
Do it.
So we need,
Would you like a motion or something? What do you want to do it?
we need,
I mean, I
we
would,
need something in writing to make part of the bylaws.
I honestly think that's why you're the chair,
Resolution.
to set those limits. I mean, you should control the agenda,
I'm comfortable.
and you should set the time limits.
I'm-
I mean, I think you know most of us can't make it much past 9 or 9:30, so.
But I'm comfortable. 9 it concludes new business, 9:30 ends discussion. But it is fair that we document something to that effect.
We'll have to amend.
Well, I would, when I do the amendment, I'm going to say that the hours are to be set by the HPC by resolution, by motion of resolution, and I would, see, if I were making that motion, I would set them, but I would give the chair the flexibility to modify them. I mean, that's just, preliminarily thinking.
Well, no, giving somebody, the chair, because if you're concluding, you only have a couple more issues, it's 9:30, and then you decide, well, too bad we can't talk about it anymore. We ought to have enough flexibility to continue for another 10 or 15 minutes.
That's what chairmen do.
So,
And with our luck, that one, at 9:30 would last till 11:30.
well, we're only starting at 9.
Well, then we'll
New
make
business at
we'll make a motion to limit Warren's power.
So what do we want to do is this, now that,
We have to set the agenda with as many items as we think we can get in.
But you don't really know that.
I know we don't, but I think, we know that 9 we can, or
Right.
something like that.
Right.
So if we keep it to a certain number, we don't know. It could be 1 hour on the first one, but on the other hand, I think that we have to have just some sort of a, estimation of
It's-
what.
It's not unrealistic that we do 6 or 7. And that's sort of where we are. And that generally takes us by 9 o'clock. To me, that's the area where we're talking, number of applications.
Maximum number, say 7 applications. That lets Judy know, she doesn't have to make that decision. How many can you put on a
So
particular night?
tonight, there were 7 applications, and you were done before 8:30.
I'm not
So-
looking to stay here 9 plus all the time.
Well,
It's
the
a-
group that could best tell and estimate how long an application's going to be is a review committee. And, when I looked through these things tonight, I said, now there's one that's going to take some time. Look how big it is, just knew right off that that's going to lead into discussion.
well,
So, I think the review committee could say,
well, as I said,
better, we have 4 really major ones, we better limit it at that for the next meeting.
well, and as I said, Judy brings me on board when there's
Yeah.
several, or there's some that look like they're going to take a while.
What happens to the application that comes in, we put for the full board that comes in on the day after our meeting, that we don't have another meeting we're pushing up the 45-day limit.
We have a meeting every 30 days.
Not always.
Well, the first answer is it gets deferred to the next meeting, and if there are consequences, then we need to deal with that.
Or if it came in like a week before, when we had our agenda already lined up.
It gets deferred.
And we already do that. Judy already does.
Bob, is there a way that what ticks off the beginning of the 45 days?
Judy deems the application complete. Everything that has to accompany the application is in the checklist. When that's complete, then she tells the applicant.
So for Corbin's question, something that comes in, it misses the agenda for a meeting, but it's complete, begins running the 45 days.
It misses the agenda.
The agenda's been set, the application comes in, and a clock is ticking. Which means, if I understand you correctly, we have 45 days to act on that application, with the hope that the next meeting will be in the next 30 days.
We have, in other municipalities I've worked at, we had just a short form we would email to the applicant for a waiver of the 45 days. Often they would give us 90 days. So that was something I used to send out under those circumstances.
I mean, there are agencies that have practices that effectively, the reason I was interested in the beginning of the ticking of the 45 days is there are agencies that have practices that require their applicants to essentially file and agree to ongoing delays until the body works on the application. It's not uncommon. Maybe in state practice here it is, but I mean federal agencies do this all the time. They're so-called delaying amendments, and they allow the agency to work. And if someone doesn't agree to a delaying amendment, then it's denied.
So, this relatively simple issue, where have we wound up? We have 10 minutes to resolve this.
I think the resolution is a good idea myself. I think what Jim said is reasonable, that it's in the bylaws, although the 10:30's been in the bylaws for a while.
Yeah, it's just it's unrealistic.
I'd say let's try
Was he on the
9
ground
o'clock,
then,
9:30 absolute, finished.
No,
I think
I agree with that. How do we get this into,
Bob's going to write a resolution.
Well, that's pretty.
Yeah.
See, again,
How do we pass the resolution at the next meeting?
you can fix that however you want. There's no reason.
The length of the agenda.
just a minute, we only have
There's no reason why you can't say our suggestion is 9 with 9:30, and that Warren be given the power to enforce that. I mean,
I'm concerned about the public
But-
understanding what,
well, but that doesn't make your action any less valid. If you say to Judy, look, our rule now is going to be 9 o'clock and 9:30 for anything else, that's a due exercise of your power.
Bob said we really didn't come to a decision on how many applications to take. And I still think.
That one's
that's
tougher.
gonna be
That one's
on the
tougher.
Review committee as they go through them and say, that's going to take time. And the next meeting, we can't really take more than 5 applications because they look like they're going to be long.
we don't look at every application in review.
You can if you want to.
We do,
No.
because they meet all the standards.
Because of need commission, they have to come to.
No, if the scope of the work is beyond the list that Bob gave us, we don't even look at it in review. It just goes straight to
Yeah.
hearing, yeah.
Well, then it's not going to mess us up.
It's not.
If we don't have to.
No, I'll do it at the beginning of the meeting. It seems to me, maybe we should add a sentence or two on the application, or when Judy notifies them that the application is going to be heard or something.
Right. Please note, the HPC operates with a 9 o'clock curfew for new business and 9:30 for all business, and that your application is subject to being calendared and scheduled at as the commission gets to it. I mean, there's got to be something you can say.
That's great, Jim. Send me an email with that, and I'll add it to my email text.
It could be a transmittal, when she transmits the
Yeah,
application.
it's also an incentive for folks to get their submissions in early, right?
Well, most people do.
Yeah.
People do, but I do send out a form email for everything you need for a full commission review, and it could end with that.
And that's a sentence that should be at the end.
Good.
'Cause they shouldn't find it out tonight.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a nasty surprise.
They might be bummed, and then they need to give us a 45-day, extension. Here, apparently verbally it's fine, it's in the minutes.
Yeah, so Judy, you're suggesting that just becomes boilerplate language on the notice that you send to folks once they submit? It's great.
I think we're doing
Well, we can talk that if you want.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I'll make a suggestion. You can clear the language with our chief.
I take it that's more of a threat than a recommendation.
Is this your way of saying we're adjourned?
Yes.
Yeah.